dear students, hope you all fine. So we have been learning about tradition and individual talent. Last time I was reading a para from this essay, this critique. I'm repeating it and then I am explaining it. I would be explaining the different important parts of this essay. So if you are trying to be involved with one part of that order, it means you are going to involve the whole of the parts of order of that organization. It is like that. So that has got an order. That is a literary tradition. Now look at stage-wise development. Literary tradition, historical sense, and that historical sense is like a building, like some organism. It has an order, it has parts. Now your poetry has to come from these parts, you have to develop, you have to bring that poetry that has to come from these parts. The historical sense, which is a sense of the timeless as well as of the temporal, and of the timeless and of the temporal together, is what makes a writer traditional, and it is at the same time what makes a writer most acutely conscious of his place in time, of his own contemporaneity. Now, because that is a historical sense, so at first we talked about historical sense as an organism, as a building which has parts, and now we are talking about, T.S Eliot is talking about it with reference to time. That historical sense that you have to develop, you must keep it in your mind that it is timeless and temporal as well. Timeless and temporal. Now, timeless in the sense that those literary traditions haven't stopped at one point in period of history. They are going along with us. Shakespeare was there in 16th century. Shakespeare was there, means his poetry is ideal. In 17th century, Shakespeare was there. In 18th century, in 19th century, in 20th century, in 21st century. So Shakespeare is traveling, his ideas, his poetry, his music is traveling from the past till present, and his ideas have been leaving some impression on the minds of various generations from various cultures. So this is, Shakespeare is gone, but his words, his poetry, that is now a literary tradition because of its importance, because of its significance, its beauty. Now it continues, and whichever new thing is taking birth in society, there is, according to T.S Eliot, there is the role of that past as well. Whichever poetry is taking birth anywhere, there is somewhere Shakespeare's words, Shakespeare's ideas inside it. No poetry can escape from the great poetic voices of the past. So timelessness, as Ben Jonson said, that Shakespeare is not do not belong to one particular age, he belongs to all ages. His poetry belongs to all ages. What it is? Timelessness. And temporal in the sense that at this period of time, it is within some time, so it is temporal. It is temporal. Shakespearean poetry reminds us the age of Shakespeare as well, 16th century. So if it continues to impact the current age, the ongoing age and decades, At the same time, it reminds us that I come from past, I come from a particular period of time when there were different fashions, when there were different ways of speaking, different words were the part of language, there was a different style of commerce, of war, of culture, of readings, of technology, and that doesn't exist anymore. So I come from a past that doesn't exist anymore. I come from that temporal time period, but I continue to exist, continue to exert influence in every age as I am doing it right now. So I am combination of the timelessness and temporal. So connecting back literary tradition, how it is the perception about historical sense. What is historical sense? It is an order, it is like a living being, it is like an organism, it has parts and it has a simultaneous order. You touch one, you are impacting another. Simultaneous order. And then it is timeless and temporal as well. So that when he will have sense about that historical sense, when he will have perception about that historical sense, then he will be conscious about his own generation problems, sense of beauty and taste of the new generation with whom a poet is living. So no poet, no artist of any art has his complete meaning alone. Our meanings are largely already fixed because the language that we learn is not creation of any individual talent. It is a cumulative process, it is a collective process. Many individuals over many histories have taken part in giving language a particular shape and a meaning. And as far as poetry is concerned, it has also a tradition, and you read poetry of the past poets and evolve your sense about poetry, and you say your poetry, you compose your poetry, so you cannot separate it, its music, its rhythm, its beauty and its meaning completely detached from the works of earlier poets. Your meaning is not a lone meaning completely emerging out of the thinking of your own mind and metrical composition of your own poetry alone. So his significance means that poet's significance, his appreciation is the appreciation of his relation to the dead poets and artists. You cannot value him alone, you must set him for contrast and comparison among the dead. I mean this as a principle of aesthetic, not merely historical criticism. The necessity that he shall confirm, that he shall cohere, is not one-sided. What happens when a new work of art is created is something that happens simultaneously to all the works of art which preceded it. So he says that if you want to determine the value of any poet, you will have to compare and contrast that poet's poetry with the poetry of the other poets, contemporary or of the bygone ages. So this is the principle. And this is the principle to understand the beauty of that poet. And then this is important that his poetry will not necessarily only conform to the poetry of the past poets, because the emergence of a great poetic composition or work of poetry is not one-sided. He says that it is not one-sided. So what happens when a new work of art is created is something that happens simultaneously to all the works of art which preceded it, the existing monuments from an ideal order among themselves, which is modified by the introduction of the really new work of art among them. The existing order is complete before the new work arrives. For order to persist after the supervention of novelty, the whole existing order must be, if ever so slightly, altered, and so the relations, proportions, values of each work of art toward the whole are readjusted. And this is conformity between the old and the new. Whoever has approved this idea of order of the form of European of English literature will not find it preposterous that the past should be altered by the present as much as the present is directed by the past, and the poet who is aware of this will be aware of great difficulties and responsibilities. So what do we learn? That basically when a new work of art is created, because according to T.S. Eliot, according to his perception, according to his vision, that always a work of art takes birth within an already existing order. So what happens, that when it is created, then the order in which it has taken birth, that order is also readjusted. That order is also readjusted. So we must know that with a new work of art, a new perception develops about the past. And during this process, past also gives some direction to this new work of art. So every new work of art is directed by the past properly and in an effective manner if the poet has that historical sense, developed historical sense. And the perception about the past will also be changed. That will also be changed. And you see that with new books coming, we look at the past with some different perception. A new value is arrived at with the new arrival of a work of art. For example, in 1960, some model of car was produced, and it was presented in the market, and it was bought. Being new, it must have attracted attention. It must be symbol, some social status, a matter of social status. And people would have considered it beautiful. But with the passage of time, now if a new model of car is produced and sold in the market, the aesthetics of the present age, the taste of this present generation is quite different, because it knows and it has experienced new different beauties, beauty in new shapes, in new forms. So that beauty that was produced in the form of car, for example in 60s, it might be beauty of 60s, because with the arrival of new work of art, a new design of car, we look at that period of 60s with some changed perception. With changed perception. But we must understand that a new model of car is basically a product of a continuous development from that first car that saw its development in 60s, and 60s saw then developments into 70s, 80s, 90s, 2001, and then this second decade of from 2011 to this 2020. So anyway, this is how this works. So present is directed by the past. So the first car has directed the ever changing beauty of any new manufacturing of car, any new design of car. So each new design and uh, beauty and new beautiful aspects of a car is basically a development of the first beautiful sense about the beautiful in technology in the form of car. So past is directing the present, and present can never claim that it is completely detached from the past, or it is something, its talent, its idea, its vision has come all alone from nothingness. No, every product in the present has its tail buried in the past. So I think we shall talk about the next idea in the next video. My students, BS part 3, please do listen this talk, if not lecture proper, though I am terming it as lecture.